One of the reasons why I stayed in a marriage that was failing for such a long time is that the prospect of going out on the dating market was enough to keep me in an unpleasant situation. Dating was worse than being in a bad marriage. At least that's the way I looked at it back then. Now, being single is an alternative that I had not considered, and being single definitely works better than either of those. One of the things that I've learned is that you will find what you look for. It kind of goes back to that whole ask and it shall be given sort of idea. But if you've noticed in life, what you go looking for, generally you're going to find it. The problem most guys have is they have no idea what they're looking for. And so they're willing to accept the first attractive girl who comes along, who's willing to touch them in that special place, and then suddenly love happens. Oh my God. And we fool ourselves into it, man. We definitely do. We fool ourselves into it. It's the intoxicating effect of regular sex. And it's like, oh, if this is love, I'm all in, man. I am all in. Unfortunately, by the time we figure out we have chosen poorly and that there are another 4 billion girls on the planet who can certainly manage that same task, we're in too far. So, how do you find the right woman, especially today when the dating scene is so dysfunctional? That's what we're going to talk about. This is Life 2.0. Let's talk about it. Before we can decide on who we're looking for, we need to answer some questions for ourselves. Like, why do you want this relationship? And you gotta be brutally honest with yourself here. And if those reasons don't sound like they're passing muster, then maybe you need to do some reassessing as to what you really, really want. Because if you want someone, if your why has to do with managing loneliness or dealing with some insecurity or some deficit that you perceive that you have, well, the likelihood that you're gonna find someone that's gonna provide you with a healthy relationship is almost zero. That old idea of birds of a feather flock together, there is a lot of truth to that. What that really means is that you're vibrating at a certain frequency, meaning that everything in the universe has a frequency. And when your frequency matches someone else's frequency, you've got a match. So if you're in a really negative place in your life and you're lonely and sad and feeling sorry for yourself, you go out looking for a girl, guess what you're gonna find? Yeah, you're gonna find lonely, sad, feeling sorry for herself girl. Yeah, and she's not gonna be fun. I mean, she's got all the holes, she's got all the spots, she's got all the equipment. So you'll think she's great for a while. And then you'll realize, oh my God, this girl's more needy than I am. Yeah, so you gotta get your why right. Because if you don't get your why, then you're gonna have a problem. So what is the right why? What is the right why? Yeah, it's got to be about taking you to the next level. Like you have achieved and become the best man that you can be. And that you can only see one path forward, and that is to have a meaningful, healthy relationship with someone who can open doors for you within your own soul and give you insights into your state of being and help you grow in a manner that you could not otherwise grow. She is the yin to your yang. She is the feminine to your masculine. There is balance in the universe, and when you achieve it, it is meaningful. It's a beautiful thing. The next question you need to ask yourself is, how is this relationship going to fit into your life? What role does this relationship play for you? That's really two questions, but they kind of overlap. So how does this relationship fit into your life? Do you have time? Like, do you actually have the time to make this work? If you don't have the time, what are you going to change? What are you going to sacrifice? How are you going to squeeze this in? When it comes to what role does she play, is she just your lover? Is she the child care provider? Is she the bringer of children? Is she a potential wife? Is she your friend? You know, Is she going to grow into being a business partner? You know, is she going to be all of these things? It becomes kind of confusing after a while because it's so easy for that lover role to turn into so many other roles. So it may be good for you to decide what role this will not be. You know, not just what role will it be, but where are the limits? How far is this going? You know, where does this relationship stop and you start? Because if you don't get clarity about what your parameters are, what your definition of yourself is, where your boundaries are, then this relationship will overwhelm you. It'll take over your whole life, or it has the potential to. So you've got to get real clear about, you know, what role this relationship's going to play. Otherwise, it'll play all the roles, and then there won't be anything left of you. You know, the first question we should have asked is, what kind of relationship do you really want? Because if you don't know what you're looking for, then obviously you're never going to find it. And what I'm talking about here is, are you looking for a marriage? Are you looking for a long-term committed relationship? Are you even looking for something that's exclusive? Are you looking for a friends with benefits relationship? Are you looking for a someone to date casually, you know, just to have something to do on the weekends? Are you looking for someone who is a friend and a lover and, you know, no commitments, but, you know, something, a situation kind of thing? So you got to get really clear about answering these questions. Otherwise, you're literally just throwing your hook in the water and eating whatever you catch. And that is not a good way to find a woman. Maybe if you're starving on some desert island, that's a good way to get a meal. But you're not on a desert island, and you need to not have that scarcity mentality. You need to think about yourself as, you know, fishing in an abundant sea, and there's lots and lots and lots of different kinds of fish that you can get. But you've got to decide exactly what you're looking for. What do you want? Because if you don't have clarity about what you want, you're never, ever, ever going to be happy with what you get. I promise you that. These next two questions kind of come together. So what are you willing to give, and what are you not willing to take? So these are really critical questions. So what are you willing to give to this relationship? Because she's not in this thing just for her health. She's in it for her own reasons. So you need to make sure that what you're willing to give and what she wants from a relationship are a match. If those things are in harmony, then you've got something that works. But if you're not willing to give something of yourself in order to have this relationship, then you're going to find it very difficult to find it. If you go into this with a transactional mindset about resources for sexual opportunity, well, that's what you're going to get. You know, you're going to give resources, your money, for an opportunity to have sex with this girl. If that's what you want, that's what you're going to get. If you're looking for a deeper, more meaningful commitment, you know, one where it's more about who you are as a man and helping her develop into who she can be as a woman, and having more of a balanced approach to a sort of a heart-based, spirit-based relationship, then be clear about that. Know that's what you want. Know that you want to move away from that transactional thing, or that you want to move toward that transactional thing. But you have got to get clarity about what you want and what you're going to give to this relationship. And then being really clear about what you're not going to take. And then this is where the boundaries come in, because it's very easy for boundaries to get pushed back, and then they're no longer boundaries. So you need to know when that red flag is popping up for you. I've seen so many very good looking, very smart, very financially well-off guys accept crossing of boundaries and justifying and rationalizing it in their minds. I was talking to a guy recently who is a very spiritual guy. He's a pastor, and he has been that way all of his life. He's right out of college, he was a pastor. I think his dad was a pastor. And so he came across this beautiful girl who had a troubled past, we'll call it. And the white knight mentality took over almost right away. She rationalized her past with some sexual trauma that she had had as a child, and she really sold herself as a reclamation project to a certain degree. And so when she started doing things that were crossing his boundaries, he was seeing it as a test. Like, It was God testing him to see if he could overcome his earthly limitations and reach out to this poor girl and help her overcome her earthly limitations. So you can see how weird and twisted our self-talk can get when we're rationalizing it all through the haze of an intoxication that comes from, sex and love and all that stuff. Because when I talked to him, I said, look, man, I'm not a pastor or anything like that, but I would guess that being your purely authentic self is probably the highest form of worship, that you can provide. Like if you're operating at your lowest form, and you're compromising your boundaries and you are accepting things into your life that you shouldn't be accepting into your life, then how do you not rationalize just being a heroin addict or an alcoholic or whatever, it's so easy that once you go down that path to start looking at all the other things that you could be doing. If you're going to cross boundaries, why not cross them all? So I think that our evolution as men has a lot to do with earning our own respect, that self-respect, and being authentically who we choose to be in this life. And I believe that when we get down to our purely authentic selves, that's more than good enough. That's more than good enough. We are strong, healthy, smart, clear-headed, moral, ethical people. And when you bring that to the table, that's more than is necessary. You have met all of the requirements to be seen as a good man. You do not need to compromise on your values and your boundaries to help someone else. They need to change to meet your standard, not the other way around. You don't need to change to fit into their standard. The minute you start changing to fit into their standard is the minute you go down that slippery slope into pure hell. So, know what you're not going to take. Know where your boundaries stand and do not allow them to be crossed. Don't ever push your boundaries back to accommodate someone else's bad behavior. That is never going to work for you. So get clear about what those boundaries are. Know what you're willing to accept and know what you're not willing to take. Period. So some of you guys are saying, okay, John, so where do I find this girl? Once I decide, where am I going to find her? Trust me, finding her will be easy once you have determined what you're looking for. Once you are clear about what it is you want, why you want it, how it fits into your life, what you're willing to take, what you're willing to give, what you're not willing to take, what you're not willing to give. Once you have a clear picture in your mind of who this person is, what are her characteristics, what kind of values does she have, how does she fit into your life? Once you have answered all of these questions, where you're going to find her becomes secondary, because everywhere you look, you'll be looking for the same girl. You can look online, you can look on dating apps if you want. You can look at the grocery store, you can look at church, you can look at charities, you can go to community organizations, you can go to meetup apps, you can do all kinds of things. And your filter is going to eliminate 90% of the women that you come across. You're not going to be attracted to them. You're going to say, well, she's too fat, she's too ugly, she's too whatever, she doesn't, ring my bell, whatever. That's fine. You still have to use that criteria. And then you're going to watch their behaviors, and you're going to say, okay, that woman seems a little too externally validated. She seems to be, confused about who she is in her life. She doesn't seem to have a good head on her shoulders, whatever the case may be. But you'll start eliminating them and eliminating them and eliminating them, and you won't be wasting your time on all those, women that don't match with you. Eventually it'll get down to just a handful of women that seem really, really like good opportunities, and you'll focus your energy on them. And then even if they don't work out, they fall through, you're going to learn something along the way that's going to help you narrow that search even more, because you're going to see the characteristics that she had that you really admired, that you hadn't included in your list to begin with, and now you're going to add that to your list. But if you're going to find a woman, if you want to have a woman in your life, you cannot leave this to chance. You cannot just assume that by some, romantic comedy script, you're going to pop into, a grocery store and she's going to run her cart into you and you're going to fall in love. That's bullshit. That will never happen. That will never work. That does not work in the real world. You've got to have a plan. You've got to have clarity. You've got to have a mission, and you've got to make it like a hobby. Like, you've got to get clear. This is what I want. This is what I'm going to do. This is the way it works for everything else in your life. If you want to be rich, you got to know what you want. You got to know what you're going to do. You got to pursue it. You know, nothing happens by chance. Whatever you focus on, your attention on, is what you're going to find. Whatever you look for, you're going to find. Ask and it is given. I'm telling you, it works. You just have to focus your attention and put together a plan and start moving in that direction with intention. And you will find what you're searching for. But if you leave yourself open to chance, well, it's a gamble, you know? I'd say at best, you've got a 1 in 10 chance of randomly selecting a girl that is gonna be even reasonably decent to live with, you know? At best. But if you create that avatar, you know who she is, you know what you're looking for, you know what her characteristics are, you know how she's gonna fit, you got all those questions answered. Well, now the odds go sky high because you've already eliminated all those other 90%. So now you're only dealing with those 10% that might be decent, and you're gonna find the best of those 10%. You're gonna find that 1 in 100, that 1 in 1,000, that 1 in a million. That's what you're looking for. Then your opportunity to have a healthy, enjoyable, enriching, fulfilling relationship goes sky high. All right, you guys, that's all I got for you today. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please like and subscribe. If you know someone who's out there trying to figure themselves out on the dating market, please share this video with them. Hopefully it'll help them on their journey to find the right person for themselves. Anyway, stay healthy, and if you can, stay single.